What's up, Thrashers, and welcome back once again to the Thrash Maniac 99 YouTube channel. And I am back with yet another album review, and we are kicking off probably the biggest weekend of albums thus far this year, and probably will be the biggest weekend all year in terms of the monstrous bands that we got albums coming from this week on March 8th. And we're kicking off with one of the biggest ones of the year, the latest from classic heavy metal, British metal pioneers, Judas Priest with Invincible Shield. This comes out on March 8th on Sony Music, and well, this is the band's 19th studio album, and don't need to go into any history. If you want to know the history, do your research, or watch my Judas Priest ranking video I did back in October, I believe. So, yeah, 19 albums, and especially after the last one, Firepower, which I did review, and it was pretty high on my Judas Priest ranking. I think I ranked it at number 8, I believe. It was a fantastic album, and that album kind of showed everybody that the gas tank of this band is still pretty much full of ideas and full of catchy riffs and amazing leads and vocals, drums, etc., etc., etc. Once again, this one produced by Andy Sneap, which I know some people are going to bitch, but hey, as long as Andy Sneap's production sounds great, even if it is Universal, all I care about is the quality. And I will say the production of this album is top-notch. It's still organic and gritty, but still having a phenomenal mix. And, of course, with Andy Sneap helping out with live guitars as of late, ever since what happened to Glenn Tipton with Parkinson's. But he's still in the band, riffing out and leading out along with Richie Faulkner. So Glenn's still there, and spoiler alert, he absolutely nails the riffing and the leads on here, like really across the board. This whole album just filled with catchy riffs, amazing guitar solos. Rob Halford, like, I don't know how, after all these years, like, the man is in his early 70s, and yet he still sounds fantastic on vocals. Like, from the lows to his mid-range to the high wails, he just, I don't know how he does it, but he still does it very well. And of course, Scott Travis on drums, he's just flying everywhere on this album. And needless to say, all these riffs and these solos, especially on one track we'll get to, they know how to take riffs and solos for a walk. Like, just lay on riffs for long enough that it sticks into your head, or lay on a solo long enough that it makes you appreciate the chops of Glenn and Richie. But talking about the song, so we kick off with Panic Attack. Now, full disclosure, I didn't listen to any of the singles when they came out, mostly because sometimes I like to wait until the album comes out, but that's depending on the band. I decided to hold myself back from listening to the singles until the album, but Panic Attack was the first one. This one brings in a little bit of like a late 70s, early 80s prog rock feel, mainly Rush, with the synths and even a riff. Sounds very much like Rush's Tom Sawyer, and I believe they even flat out said they wanted to take some cues and pay tribute to Rush on a couple of parts on this track. But yeah, great melodic riff to go along with those like Tom Sawyer-esque synths. But it does get far more aggressive than that. This track almost feels like what would happen if Rush and Judas Priest during Turbo collaborated together. Then we get into The Serpent and the King, killer riffs all throughout that remind me of Painkiller era Judas Priest, that almost thrashy Judas Priest that I absolutely love. But one thing that definitely stood out about this track in particular, not only was a cool drum fill before the solo, or a breakdown, but the vocal inflections that Rob is doing are really, really cool, especially, excuse me, especially in the choruses to this track. Like, you just hear these cool vocal inflections that Rob is doing, and again, how does the man do it after all these years? Then we get into the title track, Invincible Shield, which is, I believe, the longest track of the album at about 6.5 minutes. And this song just kind of covers the basis of almost every era of Judas Priest. Like, there's some of the storytelling aspects from the 70s. You get, like, the fast speed metal vibes of the late 70s in through to the mid 80s. But man, just this track with galloping D beat stomps, which I love those. It's very much speed metal 101. But the riffs on here, like mainly the riffs, definitely harken back to Screaming for Vengeance era Priest. And the vocal layering, another time where the vocals kind of diversify a little bit, where here there's some really cool vocal layers between Rob's highs and his lower vocals, and it just created this almost like harmony effect with the vocals. But of course, the guitar harmonies across the board, guitar harmonies are really incredible on here, but especially on this track. But also the guitar solos themselves. Man, I don't know how many leads there were. There had to have been at least 4 to 5 solos on this track, and they were all killer, just showcasing that Glenn can still do it after all these years, and Richie still being the young gun, that he's still showcasing that he's a great up-and-coming guitarist in metal, even though the man's in his early 40s. But you get the idea. Devil in Disguise. This one kind of brought in a few other wrinkles, like, of course, great riff writing, but the riffs and the song itself almost felt like a hybrid between something you would hear from Hellbent for Leather / British Steel, and dare I say, Dio-era Black Sabbath. It's kind of doomy, but there's this cool harmonized riff in the bridge of the song to kind of give it a little bit of that Dio-era Sabbath vibe to it, which, yes. And then Gates of Hell, which kind of funny how you had Devil in Disguise and then followed by Gates of Hell, so it's like evilness back and forth, or back to back, I should say. And Gates of Hell, melodies right away, feels straight out of the 80s, more guitar harmonies that strike you, and a really big chorus. Crown of Horns, which this one was one of my favorites of the entire album. Opening melody that leads to just glorious guitar harmonies, and the song itself showcases not only Dio-era Sabbath, but dare I say, it almost feels like it could have been a track on the Headless Cross album. I will say, especially the chorus, feels like something I could have heard Tony Martin pull off on Headless Cross. But you get another cool doomy breakdown. Then again, the song itself has a little bit of a doominess to it, or maybe even like a stoner doom vibe, even though it's more magical, so to speak. Then we get into As God Is My Witness, one of the thrashier songs of the album. Like, this almost feels like it could have been an Overkill song, and if Bobby Blitz Ellsworth contributed vocals on here, it would be 100% appropriate, as it's thrashy riffs, double-time rhythms, it's aggressive, yet anthemic. Trial by Fire, harmonized dark melodies that feel like they could have been continued off of the song Hell Rider from Angel of Retribution, but there is some proggy, off-time riffs and rhythms, like I believe it's 3/4, but it's also quite groovy. Then we get to the final 3 songs, where so far every song up to this point is in E-flat guitar tuning. Then we get to a song where it's in D standard, and that's Escape from Reality. Heavy as fuck riffs and doomy grooves, and it's a straight-up rocker, but there's also these little somber, clean, melodic progressions that come up here and there on the song during the verses. Then we get to Sons of Thunder, which, to take a joke from Thralls of Metal, yeah, Airheads, Galactic Cowboys. If you don't get it, watch that movie. But this song, the shortest track of the album at just under 3 minutes, and it's the one song that's in standard tuning, which is kind of surprising. But it's a ripper. It's another thrasher, almost like Overkill again. But then we get to the final track, at least of the standard edition, Giants in the Sky, a little over 5 minutes, and it's in, I want to say, C sharp. I could be wrong in that. It sounded like it was in C sharp. But again, tasty melodies, and this song has riffs that almost feel like Pantera to me. And of course, Judas Priest have flirted with a little bit of like a Pantera vibe, especially after the Ripper Owens era. It's like they flirt with that a little bit, but do it very well. But also what stood out about this track, the acoustic solos. that come out towards the end of the track. So overall, honestly, the only complaints that I really have, and they're really just minor gripes, if that. First, I don't think it's as strong as Firepower, in my opinion, just because Firepower just came out of nowhere and just assaulted our ears with madness and heaviness and epicness. Whereas here, it still does that, but I don't think it's as strong overall as Firepower. Granted, it might be more aggressive than Firepower in the guitar department, but in terms of the guitars themselves, and that leads to the other minor gripe, I wish there could have been more songs in standard tuning, because I'm a sucker for the standard tuning Judas Priest songs, because it just gives it more of that, like, epic, like, raise your fist in the air and just beat the shit out of whoever pisses you off. It's like, listen to these songs and just go around, bah, 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 bah. And I kind of missed that on this album, is more standard tuning tracks, whereas we only had one, which was Sons of Thunder. But overall, song-wise, as a whole, top to bottom, despite those two minor gripes, and that was just, it's not as good, in my opinion, as Firepower, but it doesn't have to be. And also, while the guitars are really cool, would have loved to have heard more standard tuning songs. But overall, as a whole, I'm going to give this 4.5 out of 5. I mean, this is another fantastic offering from Priest, and hopefully they can stick around for at least one more album so they can round out at an even 20. Now, where does this album rank in the rankings for Priest for me? Below Firepower and British Steel, but above Jugulator, so it would take the number 10 spot from Jugulator. So, still a fantastic album, just perhaps with more listens, it might go up. But of course, those are just my opinions. What did you guys think of Invincible Shield by Judas Priest? Let me know in the comments below. And thank you guys for watching. Like, share, subscribe, comment, all that fun stuff. But until next time, keep your horns high and your dreams wet.